Was yours.
Okay. Can you hear me? Right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, the organizers. It's a delightful occasion to come to be a part of this seminar. Though I am speaking from far from India, it's a privilege nonetheless. Thank you for maintaining all the technicalities and everything else. It was nice to be present. Okay, so the title of my paper is Architecture of Dystopian Succubus in Divergent and Hunger Games. So this particular idea of dystopia is not something which is very recent, or it is something which we just got to know after 1994, when the idea of pulp fiction came through Tarantino. So what is dystopia? Let me just talk about what is dystopia before getting into the crux of my argument. Now, dystopia is something which not only is an epistemic but an ontological violence against thinking. So if we start from the idea of cogito ergo sum of Descartes, where he says, je pense donc je suis, I think therefore I am. The basic idea of a totalitarian state has been to separate mind and body in its respective denominative perfunctionates. So, where mind and body becomes separate, it is easier to control what a person needs to think. So the regimentalization is the regimentalization of mind, and it carries forward from mind to body and translates in all our actions. So these two particular novels, Divergent and Hunger Games, bring forward two different ways of creating dystopia. Sorry. So in this particular Capitaloscene, Virolocene and Androcene age, even Anthropocene age, what we have seen from the zombie apocalypse to the totalitarian regimentalization of a mind is the absence of thought. So when we see this particular novel, The Hunger Games, the final part called Mockingjay, and we see the particular dialogue where we say, when Katniss Everdeen says, I want to go, I break in. I am no help to the rebels here. And Coin asks, and if you are killed? She answers, make sure you get some footage. You can use that anyway. I answer. So, in an age which is manifested through the media, where media says the ultimate word, there the commodification of mind and body is a methodology, an epistemic methodology, to understand that we are not able to think beyond what the media puts forward. Can you go to the second slide, please? Hello?
Second slide, yes.
Second slide, please. Yeah. So, sorry. So, here I have given certain theories by Michel Foucault to talk about the difference of madness and civilization. So when we are talking about the madness and civilization as well as madness in civilization, what we see that what Katniss Everdeen says is what we are socially certified to say. And she says, and I quote, "Although most of the credit of my exoneration must be given to Dr. Aurelius, who apparently earned his naps by presenting me as a hopeless, shell-shocked lunatic." So, a trauma itself is a sellable commodity. You can sell it in the market. So, what we see is a Capitaloscene. In the Capitaloscene environment, not only man is a commodity, the idea itself is a commodity. Trauma itself is a commodity, and it depends on how a capitalist world presents it. So when I'm saying it's a capitalist world's presentation, I am not trying to only mean the regimentalization of America. America is a capitalist country which have regimentalized thought for consumerist principles, but not anything is different when it is a communist regime or a fascist regime or a Nazist regime. The basic control of human thought and the basic idea of suppressing individual thinking is in itself the way a state controls an individual. So, in the Hunger Games and in Divergent series, we see a continuation of this idea of nightmare oppressiveness, which began long back by the German expressionism of Fritz Lang's masterpiece Metropolis, and the very contracted formalism of the caste division, which is emphasized in the Divergent, is a replica of the caste division or class division, which an autocratic, bureaucratic, capitalist or communist society needs. So even when communism is talking about freeing all the class system, fighting against the class system, they are creating their own idea of class. They are creating their own idea of suppression. And here we see such kind of suppression, not based on aristocrats or and have-nots, have and have-nots, but here the factions are like the abnegation faction or the selfless, the erudite faction, which obviously talks about the meritorious one, the meritocracy, the amity section, which is supposed to bring in peace, and finally we have dauntless, the braves. So the basic commodification of class system is not absent even in a post-apocalyptic world. So whether we are living in a capitalist, bureaucratic, autocratic regime, or a communist regime, or a fascist regime, or a Nazi regime, this very idea of classifications, which takes away the idea to think or encourages the self ideas, is a formalism which we have taken from Foucault's theories. We know that we do not live in a vacuum, as Foucault says, but what we need is more of an heterotopian space, which Foucault has pointed out here in the quotes which I have mentioned. Next slide, please. So when we move from the basic concept of dystopia, where you are not supposed to think and you're supposed to follow orders as per government, as per the regime, as per the reign of terror goes. And Derrida says, obviously, every text has its own political ideology. And this ideological charging of science is what creates, as Theodore Adorno says, cultural industry. So this American world of solidarity and secured capitalism had no need to show glimpses of dystopia, which we see in both the novels. And the attack on America and their society by Taliban in 9/11 made them essentially re-evaluate their identity and society and their cultural industry. So when we are facing a name like Panem, Pan means all and M is them. It's not only the idea of Roman gladiatorial finesse, where people are made to kill each other for the delight of, for the voyeuristic delights, but it is used as a footage to develop the people's non-thinking. So what happens when people stop thinking? What actually happens? Dystopia, nightmare. Now what is that actually is happening in dystopia? You are not thinking, that's simple. But more than that, what is happening is that we are subjecting ourselves and our kids to a scope of no scope, a politically deprived identity. And when we see President Snow, who is very much Donaldian Trump, or the Trumpian Donald, in this particular series, we see that this particular character, President Snows, and his policies bring out exactly what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan after the bombardment and the ghetto system. Now, ghetto system is always criticized as something of a Hitlerian, Nazi individuality, which obviously America solved when they won the Second World War. But what is they doing in Abu Ghraib? What are they doing in Guantanamo Bay detention camp? That is exactly what is shown in this particular novel, where President Snow is feeding the commoners with shit, with bootlaces. You have to bite your own shoe to survive. So what comes out of this particular novel is a realistic image that that was leaked in US from the CIA campus, where we see the amoral bloodshed of 2,000 people butchered and living in a condition which even Hitler would be proud to make the Jews live on. So what Katniss Everdeen suggests, she's a rebel. But she is not a rebel without a cause. Usually, rebellion itself is also a part of system. And she does
Don,
not
I'm sorry for interrupting you. 2 more minutes.
Okay. So there is this particular line in the story where it says, fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us. Again, in Divergent, we see similar when Triss is talking about her status as a rebel. I am no longer Triss, the selfless, or Triss, the brave. I suppose that now I must become more than the either. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about. The Panem, the last, the slide before, and finally, I would. Yeah, this is the slide I was talking about. is all, and M is phonetically same as aim. Thus, panem is all same, which is making an individual becomes erasable. Our will becomes erasable. And go to the last slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So this is the final part of my argument, since, as I was reminded, that I don't have much time. Tris in Divergent series is the Lacanian idea of a barred subject, whose lack cannot be fulfilled except through anxiety. So both Katniss Everdeen and Tris, they survive on anxiety. They survived as a barred subject. Being a rebel is a castrated being, because in a Capitaloscene world, the existence of a being is essentially categorized by how much anxiety that person is in. The moment there is a fulfillment, there is no rebellion. And if there is no rebellion, there is no rebel to portray and posterize in front of you. So we need the posters in a capitalist world, communist world, fascist world, Nazist world. If you do not have posters, we cannot have dystopia. And if we cannot have dystopia, we'll have people thinking. Thank you.
Yeah, you're gonna have to come here though. Shout into the computer all the way to India. We're waiting a few seconds for if there are any questions.
Sure.
Because of the advanced equipment that we have here by one. Well, thank you very much. No questions. Thank you very much.